Welcome to this Java Break with Basis. Today is the second of a three-part series, the best of BBJ 12. This is part 2, and today we'll be talking about faster, better, and new building blocks. We'll be focusing on development tools as well as Basis utility building block components for your business application. My name is Nico Spence. I'm the Chairman and CEO of Basis International. Our session agenda today is to cover performance gains. We're going to look and see how much faster Barista is when we're loading a grid in BUI as well as SysGUI. We'll look at more about grid functionality, detail header grids, and also Barista's query functionality. We'll do a quick recap of a couple of components we covered in prior Java breaks about Basis building blocks for BBX development, Barista components for query definition system. We'll use the Bisco Java break case study, a quick review of that. And we'll also look at the DarkArt, the document output object, how we can integrate that into our BBX code. We'll look at the BB Jasper utility that's been updated, what new feature and function we've added, and we'll look at the brand new resource bundle editor, why we created it and what it can do for you. And finally, we'll finish off with new Barista debugging tools, and then we'll take your questions. So firstly, talking about performance gains, the Barista examples we have today are BUI and SysGUI grids, Barista header detail grid with core point code, specifically where we have a detail grid that is going to execute core point code between each line of that detail grid. And then we'll look at Barista's query optimization. We've enhanced and optimized the SQL engine usage within Barista's query, and we'll see how much better our performance gets with large data sets. And of interest, in this demonstration, we'll see how a little timer program written in BUJ will communicate via the namespace with both our BUI and SysGUI interpreters. This first example has 3 interpreters running, one the stopwatch and running SysGUI, and 2 versions of BUI, one 11.12 and one 12.0. Both of them are grids that we're going to load up. They are the Barista states file from the samples, the examples that ship with the product. So let's start up the 11.12 version. We'll see our stopwatch is running, and this is going to populate the grid in the BUI environment. And then we can reset the timer and then restart the 12.0 version and see how that compares. And we can see substantially better performance, more than 4 times faster. And these enhancements will also be apparent in SysGUI. Let's look at our second example, which is a header detail example, header with a detailed grid. And in this particular case, we're going to be working with a 400 row data set that's going to be populated in the detailed grid. And we're also going to have some core point code that is going to execute between each row being displayed. So we start up the 11.12 version, and so it's going to populate the full grid and show the time from start to end of loading up and executing the core point code at each point. So 15.2 seconds to display that, which may not be too bad depending upon the amount of work your core point code is doing. But let's reset the clock and see what performance gains 12.0 gives us. So rerunning the same process, exactly the same code, we deliver the result in 3.4 seconds, more than a 4 times performance gain. Again, this performance most discernible when we have core point code. Our last example is an example of the optimization we've done within Barista of query definitions, optimization of our SQL. In this case, we have a 200,000 row record set that we're going to populate. And when we test this query, the time that it's going to take here to generate the result is not just the display, of course, it's gaining the result set from the SQL query, which is the bulk of the work, and then displaying the results in a grid. So it begins display around about 16, 18 seconds through, and then at 20.5 seconds we complete the display. By now optimizing with work that we've done with our engineers on the SQL side, we can regenerate that display in only 0.7 seconds. So very key that we optimize that performance. As a quick reminder, we saw our Barista examples In the first case, we went down to 1.6 seconds from 6.6 seconds. In the second case, we were over 4 times faster. And in the last case, we went down with the 200,000 record data set to just 0.7 seconds to bring up that query. Next, I'd like to recap a piece that we covered in more detail in a prior Java break, an example where we can instantiate a GUI grid from within a character-based application. In this case, the example was a customer buyer lookup for one of our end-user customers. Let's have a look at it. Let's have a look at what the old system looked like. So as we might expect, here's a character-based screen. We have a ton of options that we can go into. Let's do an initial sign-in. This default screen we're presented with. Right, here's the piece we're interested in. We want to look up buyers by company name. So we can do a partial name. That's pretty useful. Nice functionality. But then we get presented with this sort of complex screen. So in a tabular format rather than a grid format. And we can scroll through it, but we really can't go beyond that initial selection. So if we really wanted to see somebody who started with a different name, we don't have that option. We also can't look it up by buyer. So sorting in a different sequence is not easily accessible to us. Of course, we could go and write that code, but again, the 80 column by 25 line screen is not well suited. Now, this is a very complex system, as we've just seen here, a ton of options that we could be running. Comprehensive, but not exactly user-friendly. Here we are in the Barista screen, and we have an option on the menu to launch the standard character-based interface. So there it is, but we also have the option of running a different version of the program, and here we have one we call Z menu, and we'll see it's a subset of the previous menu because a lot of these options will now be handled by the user himself. And so we've got a little menu front end. When we click on it, we'd go straight into the Barista query screen. So here's a grid with all the information that we might expect. We've got some underlined hyperlinked options where you can drill down into the subsidiary information, and we can scroll through it looking for the specific information that we wish. And then once selected, we return to the program the customer required. Let's have a look at the code that is used to call this query. So here are a couple of snippets of code. On the top we have the simple call to zmenu.bbj with a return value, and here we'll just break out and show the value as we saw when we ran the code. And here's an excerpt of the code in zmenu.bbj. We're setting a group namespace to be able to store the value of their return value, this ret val $, and then we're doing a simple s call to the back's launch task.bbj. That's the task that can be launched from outside of Barista, external launching, and then we're going to pass that value back into the namespace variable. At the end, we'll pick up that namespace value and assign it to retval $. So a very simple set of code, not particularly complex, and that's the only change we have to make to our older character or GUI application code. Next, we'll recap the use of another Barista component within our BBX coding. This example is all about the DarkArt object, and firstly we'll touch on what the DarkArt object is. So let's talk about what that DarkArt object is. DarkArt is really a subsystem component of the Barista Rapid Application Development tool, but it can be used without the Barista MDI. So you can change all your print at statements to vector assignment and invoke the DarkArt object. So you're essentially taking advantage of the document output subsystem that ships with Barista without the overhead of the Barista interface. This is what the output looks like when we invoke DarkArt. So as you can see, we have the columnar type reporting, but we have the ability to select our output types, even fax or email, from within this preview window, and we can even adjust the column widths and hide columns if we so wish. So it's perfectly suited for columnar and tabular type reporting. And the benefit you get from DarkArt is the built-in archiving functionality. You don't have to go and write a single line of code. That's all part of the DarkArt subsystem. Similarly, the output types are embedded within the DarkArt object: PDF output, XML, CSV, XLS, and the interface to Google Docs, along with the ability to present raw output, should you still decide to use a third-party tool to manipulate that output. And you have optional print preview where you can do the column adjustment and you can specify the columns that you wish to have shown. You can automate the output and the invocation of DarkArt via program control so that there's no UI, or you can have interactive usage where the user has the option to rename and save output files. It also offers you a one-step select and process to a particular output type, and you can open and reprint docs from the document inquiry system. Our example uses the DarkArt object from within a traditional character-based app. We've got an aging report. Let me fill in the options quickly. So now when we run this report, it's going to generate the DarkArt object that's really a component of the Barista subsystem. And we've instructed it to give us a print preview. This report, of course, as a demo, doesn't have any data in it. But we can save this off, save as, and select the type. So all of the functionality that you might expect, I'm going to save this in my documents as a PDF, or I could select a different file type, CSV, XML, XLS, for example. I can also go and have a look at the settings up here that come with Barista's DarkArt and dictate that I want it to go to output to fax, email, etc., or Google Doc format to save it in the cloud. So there's a ton of ways of saving that data. I don't have to write a single line of code to take advantage of all of this functionality. Let's have a look at that document on disk, see how it saved it. So if I go into Windows Explorer, look at Documents, I can see here that I've saved the PDF output of the report. So I double click on it, it's going to open it up in Adobe Acrobat. And there it is. Well, that certainly is a ton of functionality we get from the DarkArt subsystem. But how much effort did we have to put in place to make that happen? How did we do that? Firstly, we needed to set up the environment instead of opening the printer. So here we have set up DarkArt. We have a use statement, a couple of declares. We instantiate a new object. We create a new vector. And then, of course, we pass username and password, firm number, language, the document ID, and the report title as our initial setup. So very straightforward. You'll find this sort of information from the DarkArt tutorial or the DarkArt object documentation. What's the next step? We need to set up our report columns. Once again, pretty straightforward. You'll see the formatting and again the details of the various options, the parameters that you'll need to pass. And we have two different report types here. One is detail, another one is summary. So two different sets of report headings. And we've accommodated both types in this example. And again, the documentation will give you details of the format of these columns. Finally, those print statements, those print at statements, we need to modify the code to replace the print at statements with assignment of values to the vector as defined in the tutorial. So let's have a look down here. Here's our previous FP $7 equals D, then print to the channel, line feed, the grand total, and then we printed these variables, FUTRUO $0, the array elements U1, U2, etc. And you'll see those match up very simply to goes to a blank line to create a blank line, and then here are the vector values for grand total, etc., and the various string values. Obviously these nulls are for columns that don't have any values, but you'll see very simple types of matching and nothing particularly difficult. So as I said earlier, not a lot of effort required and pretty straightforward to retrofit some existing code, replacing your print at statements with populating values in vector. And then we also have the report headings that we would have set early on, and then launching the report. In our particular case, we've utilized the ability to populate these values to a namespace, and then we're doing an scall of the render document.bbj. And what does render document.bbj look like? Very straightforward. Again, we get the detail that we need from the namespace, and then we process the document with an error trap. So very straightforward, very easy to do. And we'd encourage you to look at the tutorials, both to retrofit your code, replacing those print at statements, and also the documentation on the DarkArt. So this is where they are. Here the links are. Next, we'll talk about an existing basis utility, the Jasper utility that has been updated. It's been entirely rewritten in BBJ. It was previously a Java utility. All of the existing functionality is retained, and we've added some new feature and function. Firstly, you can set initial display values for zoom level or report page that it's going to start on, and you can also save the report as an image. In addition, you can add a child window with custom tool buttons to give real meaning to the idea that this is a building block that you can build on and enhance for your own specific needs. And lastly, and possibly most importantly, it runs in BUI. So the new utility has a better appearance. We've enhanced the tool buttons across the top, and also, as I said earlier, it can run in the browser user interface. Let me hand over to Brian Hippel to demonstrate its function.
First, I want to point out that many of our BBJ Jasper Viewer demos can be found in the Demos directory under your installed BBJ directory. For example, on Windows, this would be the C Program Files Basis Demos directory by default. So if we expand that directory, you'll notice that there's a report subdirectory, and that there's a myriad of .jasper and .jrxml files, as well as some BBJ code that are used to run the Jasper reports. With time in mind, I went ahead and created a small BBJ program that can be used to fill a report and then view it in the Jasper Viewer window. The first few lines in this program are use statements, which are used to get access to Java, classes, or BBJ custom objects. In this case, we're getting access to the BBJ Jasper Report, BBJ Jasper Viewer window, and BBJ Jasper Viewer control, all who are in the BBJ Jasper.bbj file. Next are the declares. Declares are just declaring an object variable to a type. For example, a report is a type of BBJ Jasper Report, and the Viewer window is a type of BBJ Jasper Viewer window. The next three lines are creating the report. In order to create a report template must be used, either the JRXML or the .jasper. Then a connect string, in this case it's a JDBC connect string, going to localhost to the Chili Company database with the user credentials. You create a Jasper report by passing in the report template and the connect string. You then fill the report by calling the fill method. Now all that needs to be done is simply pass this report into a BBJ Jasper Viewer window and show the window. So let's go ahead and run this code and see what it gives us. We see the report in the Jasper Viewer window and control. We didn't lose any of the functionality of the Java control. As you can see, there's a myriad of tool buttons at the top on the toolbar. We still have the ability to save, save as, or save as a Google document, the ability to print the report, reload the report, which refreshes the data from disk. We can still navigate in the report. We can go to the next page, the previous page, the last page, and the first page. We can also do the actual size. We can also set the fit mode, which currently is at actual size, or we can set it fit to page, or we can set it fit to width. We can also increase the zoom level by zooming in and decrease the zoom level by zooming out. Also, a specific zoom level can be typed in or selected from the list. Hyperlinks also still work in the new BBJ Pure version. I can click on March to get the sales for March, and within there I can click on hyperlinks, for example, to go to the customer information. And of course, launching BBJ applications from a report can be done as well. For example, when I click on Digital Dashboard, it'll bring up a BBJ application, which is a digital dashboard of all the sales information. Previously I spoke about the enhanced UI. One of the things we did was create new image icons that are colorful for each of the tool buttons in the toolbar. Also, we added the ability to create an image of the current page. Say we navigate to page 2, and there's some information on here that you'd like to give to the owner of the company. Simply click the new tool button that creates an image of the current report page, and it'll ask you for a name that you want to save the image. In this case, it's a ping image. You can save it, and then you can email that to your owner. Let's take a look at some BBJ code to implement some of the new features of the BBJ Jasper Viewer window and control. Here's the same BBJ program, salesbymonth.bbj, with a few lines added. In the first added line, all we're doing is simply getting the viewer control from the viewer window via the getViewerControl method. The next line is just setting the current page to the second page. Then we're going to go ahead and set the zoom level to 123%. Let's go ahead and execute this code and see what we get. As you can see, the current page is at the second page, and the zoom level is set to 123%, as we expected. Now let's take a look at a more in-depth example. In this example, we want to add a new tool button to the toolbar that will email the report to email addresses specified in a BBJ list button. So let's take a look at the code that's required in order to add this functionality. Then we're going to go ahead and call set fit to width because we want the report to fit in the whole space of the Jasper Viewer window. We are then going to add a spacer so our tool button isn't right against the last tool button on the toolbar. We're going to add a child window to the toolbar, and to that child window we'll add a list button which contains the following email addresses. Then we'll add a tool button to the toolbar and set a callback so that the onEmail function will get called when pushed. The onEmail function will simply just display a message box for this demo. First of all, notice that it did come up fit to width. Second of all, here's our new list button with the list email addresses, and a new email tool button when pressed will email the report. I'll go ahead and click on that email button, and sure enough it brings up our message box. One of the biggest benefits of providing a BBJ Jasper Viewer control and window in a pure BBJ implementation is that it now can be run in buoy mode. You can experience this for yourselves by running BBJ Enterprise Manager in BBJ 12, selecting the buoy configuration node, finding the BBJ Jasper Viewer entry, and right mouse clicking in the edit box and selecting the launch. This will display the same sales report that we've been viewing here today, where you can interact with it inside the browser.
In BBJ 12, we've added additional language support to Barista. Barista now has regional language support added to the existing locale capabilities. For example, ES for Spanish and ES_MX for Spanish Mexico. Barista ships reconfigured for regional translations, including English Canada, French Canada, and Spanish Mexico. And that's probably a really good segue to the next new utility we've added to the Basis toolset, and that's the Resource Bundle Editor. It's a new Basis supplied utility. It's a string table editor useful for language translation of applications. Used in conjunction with the BB Translator utility, it can be run in a browser, so you can actually run the Resource Bundle Editor itself from a browser. And that means that you can deploy it to your language translators wherever they may be in the world without the need to install BBJ or to install Java on their desktops to be able to do the translations for you. Basis currently uses resource bundles for translation for the Basis installer, for the Barista RAD tool, and for add-on software's ERP building blocks. Now, we didn't develop this utility lightly. We found that all the existing utilities didn't have the feature and function that we needed, and therefore that we think you will need for your translations of your business applications. Let me hand over to Brian Heppel to take you through a demonstration of the new Resource Bundle Editor.
Let's take a quick look at the Resource Bundle Editor. In order to open a resource bundle, simply go into the File menu and select Open, or if you want to create a new one, select the New menu option. There's also the Recent Bundles menu item that allows you to select previously opened resource bundles. As you can see, once opened, you can see the keys on the left hand side of the screen, and on the right you can see the various values for that key. Also notice that you can display the keys in a tree view if your keys are hierarchical in nature, or you can simply view them as a list. One of the nice features that we added is the ability to sync to the default one of the available languages, which can be done by simply selecting the desired locale from the list box. In this case, we're going to go ahead and select English so that anytime we make changes to the English, they will automatically be added to the default. As you can see, the toolbar has a myriad of tool buttons. There's a tool button to create a new resource bundle, to open an existing resource bundle, to close the current resource bundle, to save, save as, and exit the application. There also are tool buttons to cut, copy and paste, undo, redo, and do a find. You can also go to the previous key, the next key, add a key, delete a key, rename a key, add a locale, delete a locale, set options, and go to the About. All these functions are also available via various menu options. The current resource bundle that we're editing is the one that is used by the Basis installation program. As you can see, as I select a key, the values change that correspond to that key. There's also a pop-up menu that, if you right mouse click, will bring up the ability to add a key, delete a key, or rename that key. Quick and easy way to add a key is simply go to the edit box and type in a new value. We'll go ahead and add a test key. And once I press the tool button to add the key, sure enough, the values are initialized. And since I know English, I'll go ahead and add the English value. As a developer, I would continue to do this, adding, modifying keys for the languages that I know. And I would simply make this program available to my professional translators in order to get the values for the other languages. One other feature I would like to point out really quickly is the ability to do the find. In this dialog, you can type what you want to find, and that value we can look at keys or values, or keys and values. And when you select values, there's a drop-down list box in which you can select the language that you're looking for. There's also the ability to match a whole string or do a case-sensitive search. So let's go ahead and look at for keys and values, and we're going to look for basis. And this is important because there's 545 keys with 8 values each. So we're talking about thousands of translations. In order to find one, it's really nice to have this find dialog. So simply click the Find Next button, and sure enough, it finds me the first key and value that have basis.
Thanks, Brian. The last item on our agenda today is the new Barista Debugging Tool Set. We've created these to simplify the troubleshooting of your Barista and custom call point code. We've given you the ability to interrupt the process, the old-fashioned escape, that allows you to then to dot step through your code. We also give you the ability to view the dump, give you the contents of the workspace, and also to start and stop a trace file and invoke the performance analyzer to immediately see where you may have some inefficient code. And lastly, we give you the option to view the namespaces and the contents of the namespace variables. Let me hand over to Ralph Lance to take you through a demonstration of this new functionality.
I'd like to review with you 4 new functions that have come to Barista to assist the developer in their daily development activities and support efforts. Within inside the Barista MDI, under the menu Development, are the 4 new functions Interrupt Process, View Dump, Start Stop Trace, and View Namespaces. Let's take a look at how they work. Starting a standard maintenance form or standard grid form, as well as the order detail form, these functions are enabled. The first function, Interrupt Process, sends an escape to the Barista process. From here, you can list program, you can interrogate variables, or maybe even perform a dump. An alternative to this one-way presentation of the dump data is to use the next menu item, View Dump. View Dump is exactly the same data, but presented in a developer-friendly tree format where the global strings are separated from the program variable data. We see that the strings as well as the variables are sorted alphabetically, and in some cases, for example, by arrays, the elements are listed, and by strings that contain templates, we see the template definition, and then we see the string content. The next item is the Start Stop Trace function. When we start a trace, we have the opportunity to choose whether we would like to have it timed or untimed. The advantage of a timed trace is that we can use the Basis Performance Analyzer to do the analysis. So let's do that. We'll choose timed. We'll perform a couple of functions. Choose another record. Choosing the menu item stops the trace. We see that a trace file is stored in the work area directory of the Barista installation. Now the trace was timed, so by choosing yes, we'll be starting the Basis Performance Analyzer. And there we have the culprits that are taking time when this program is being run. Here's a small tip. Underneath Program Options, it is a good idea when process events, which waits for user input, occurs in the program, it's a good idea to enter process_events as a filter. That way, the information presented in the Performance Analyzer is more true to the rest of the program lines that are being executed. The last item is the view namespaces. Similar to the view dump, it's a tree view of the global and group namespaces that are currently active. For any one of the alphabetically sorted group namespaces or global namespaces, you can choose to see the content.
Thanks, Ralph. So let's summarize what we've covered today. We've looked at performance gains, especially in the Barista product. We looked at using basis building block tools for BBX development, both for the query definition system and the document output object. We looked at how we've updated the BB Jasper utility that allows us to view iReports. We've looked at the new resource bundle editor and its usage. And we've looked at the new Barista debugging tools. Let's take your questions.